Hey, it's Dexter, and that's Tom, and we're from All IT Services. And if you'd like to know more about us and what we do, you can visit allit.services. And today, for a section that I call Business Stuff You Should Know, we have Jane Save from the Save Group. Now, the Save Group is a human resources consulting firm based in Melbourne. And Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So tell us a little bit about the Save Group. We're going through your website now, and you do a lot of things that are very important to us and stuff that we don't actually implement in our business. So you can give us a quick rundown of what you do. That'd be great.
Yes, sure. So the Save Group acts as either fractional or outsourced HR for businesses usually that have under 50 employees, because our belief is if you have under 50 employees, you don't need to have your own internal HR resource or internal HR department, but you do need help from time to time. So that's our niche market that we really focus on. It's helping those small to medium businesses. Of course, we do work with some larger clients that have 6,000, 10,000 employees, but that's overflow work. So what we do is we help these smaller businesses acting like we're their HR department, and they get a dedicated consultant. It could be, oh, we just need legally compliant employment contracts. We need a company handbook with all our policies in one. It could be we're struggling with Johnny's performance. Can we put him on a performance improvement plan? It might be Johnny hasn't performed. How do we go about terminating his employment, or the business is in financial difficulty? We're considering redundancies. So I guess that's some of the day-to-day firefighting that we do. But then there's the nice to do stuff. So the culture alignment surveys, looking at stay interviews and how to retain your employees, assisting with hiring and recruitment, performance reviews, annual reviews, and everything in between.
When you list off things like that, there's so much to human resources, isn't there? It's crazy.
Yeah, there is, and that's just a snippet. But it's really end-to-end life cycle, and hopefully the life cycle of your employees is 5 or 10 years. I know we're seeing shorter life cycles and people doing a lot of job jumping every 2 years, but if you can hold on and retain those employees, the amount of money that a business actually saves is huge. Recruiting a new employee, they say it costs 1 time that person's annual salary. So if that's somebody on $50,000, it's $50,000. If it's 100, it's about $100,000.
How we just on the topic of tenure, is it obviously COVID's? We talk about nearly in every chat we have. It's like, what's COVID changed? But it really did change the tenure sort of story, didn't it, for a lot of organisations and employees?
Yes, it did. And look, it was so difficult to find employees over that COVID period. We did have a resource shortage in many areas. But then on the other side, there was this whole downsizing happening. So really a couple of odd years, and I think the market's only just starting to improve. So for those businesses out there looking to now hire talent, it is definitely gotten a lot better, and there is more talent available out there and better candidates. So you can be a little pickier. What we found during COVID was there were some sectors like manufacturing. Obviously, they were able to stay open and continue operating throughout COVID, but they were unable to find any talent.
Interesting. Tell us on tenure, and we mentioned about culture, and we were talking just before the show started about, I'm passionate about culture. Everyone talks culture, right? It's like, if you don't sort of, it's important to everyone. Of course it is. Everyone wants a good culture. You don't sort of own a business and run a business and set out to have bad culture. What do you see as some of the big things that small and medium-sized business just probably not fail at, but struggle in getting the culture piece right? Is it a whole series of 1%ers, or is it big things you see where businesses don't get it quite right?
Yes. What I would say is the key starts from having a really strong vision and a strong purpose for every business. So nobody wants to come to work and just have a job. People are looking for a career and a purpose in their lives. We work, if we're working full time, 5 out of 7 days. So we spend the majority of the time with people in the workplace and the majority of our time at the workplace. So that's really important to people. So if you have a strong vision and purpose for the company and employee, and that's communicated to employees and they understand and believe in that, That's going to help with your attention and your culture. And then it's going that step further. So looking at what are our core values for the business, and you might have 3 or you might have 5, but making them real for the employees. This is how we behave. This is how we act. This is how we hire, and this is how we fire. We do everything according to our core values. So when you start to get at the heart of that, that's where you start from culture. And then it's about embedding that into all of your systems and processes across the business. Are your core values around your office? Are they on your screensaver? Do you talk about them in your daily meetings or your weekly meetings? Do you hold people accountable? Even management, do you call management out when they're not abiding by your core values, your mission, and your purpose? So that would be my advice for the first step. But the more you can embed that within performance management processes, the way you hire and interview, and every other life cycle stage across the employee life cycle makes a big difference.
I've been exposed to literally hundreds of different businesses through IT support and through other different ventures. And I know the culture piece is missing in many of them. Is that one of the things that you see when you get a new client, that you go in there, you ask about their culture and they give you that funny look and they're like, what culture? And then you spend the rest of the time trying to introduce it and explain it to them. How are those talks?
Pretty much like you just explained. When they don't even understand what it could look like, it's about breaking it down. I mean, big companies do a good job of having their culture defined, but that doesn't mean they actually follow up and act on it. It's smaller businesses that just don't really understand what is culture. How do I go about instilling a different culture in my business? Yeah, we see a lot of blank faces, and it's not something that you can just change overnight or turn around and say, I'm going to improve my culture overnight. I mean, we usually advise doing something like a business alignment survey or a culture survey to actually objectively measure where a business is at today. So what is your current culture according to your employees, and do that anonymously, an anonymous survey. And then when you actually pinpoint where they are today, then you can look at, where do we want to shift that? Why is it good? Why is it bad? What do we do well? What don't we? And what improvements or suggestions do the employees within our business have? And get them to actually help shape what that culture could be like. Because the more involved they are, the more they're going to follow that. Yeah, and hold each other accountable.
What we've found works, and this is just a personal perspective, Joan, is over the years is we've got our set of culture and value which we've developed some time back, is just trying to utilise those in the processes that we do, whether that's internal or through with customers, and try and ingrain them in things. Like I harp on about communication. It's one of our values, and it goes a little bit deeper. But again, it comes back to trying to insert those into the conversations you're having with positive or sometimes alignment conversations with employees, but everything, clients, everything, and then all of a sudden it's sort of like that. Well, it's just what we do. So that's what's worked. Not that trust me, we don't get it perfect 100% of the time, but it seems to work and do that. Talk us through in terms of some of the struggles that, because I know coming back to HR, it's a massive, shouldn't say time sink, but some of the administrative components of it is. The culture piece is certainly not. But where do a lot of businesses, if they're utilising your business and your people and services, where do people get the biggest savings and the biggest benefits sort of immediately, apart from all the the things that could come with it down the track? And I'm sure we'll get to.
Yes, I would say the immediate benefit would be compliance and risk aversion. So no business wants to end up in Fair Work or wants to end up in the media for underpayment of wages. That's a big one, and a lot of people are very afraid of that, and they're actually bringing in now to actually criminalize wage theft. So you can be sent to prison for it. It's going to be a criminal offense. Yes, and that's coming out later this year. So I think where a lot go wrong is just ignorance. There's 121 modern awards out there, and they are really difficult to interpret. Some are up to 300 pages long. The normal person who hasn't studied a HR degree probably can't interpret these documents.
No chance.
Some don't even know that there are modern awards out there, and they're so hard to classify. You've got to start with classifying the industry you're in, because you'll have an industry award. Well, most places will, but then if you don't, you've got to go down to occupational awards. So you might be covered. One business might be covered by 4 or 5 different awards within one business. And that means that the employees you're hiring have different pay benefits, different allowances, different overtimes, different notice periods. And that can be really confusing. So what I would say is having really strong employment contracts is important for a business. If you can get them right, a lot of other things fall into place, because then you can make sure you understand the employment contract will state what modern award you're on, what classification that employee is on, and we would make sure it's called BOOT, better off overall test, and make sure that the remuneration you're paying them, either all inclusive, is better off overall according to that modern award. So we've done a lot of back pay audits, some clients up to 4 years, and they just didn't realize that they had these penalty rates and overtime that they should be paying. And it's cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, but mainly the time to actually go back and audit those 4 years. So that's definitely a big one, us helping them avoid risk, avoid ending up in Fair Work, avoid ending up in any newspapers or on TV, and just doing the right thing.
So Jane, is that, you mentioned that you're basically full stack in terms of all of the HR resources. You mentioned policy and compliance. Is that usually at the level that you get into a company at the start and then you blossom out, or do you go from a hiring and firing perspective, or is it something else? Like your regular client, at what point do they engage you?
Yes. So a regular client, and what we try to do with all of our clients, is we start with what we call a mini HR audit. It only takes 2 hours. And this is where we sit with that client to understand their business. We work out what they currently have in place, what they have in place that needs some improvement, or what they don't have in place at all. And we go through all compliance legislation as well as the nice to-dos. Once we've completed that audit, we then suggest to them things that they must do, and then things that would be nice to do. So a must do would be make sure everybody has a signed compliant employment contract and understands the modern awards that are relevant for that particular role in your business. And then the nice to do might be, do you do annual development and performance reviews? Do you sit with your employees and talk about their short and long-term career goals and what development skills they have? It's not a must, but it's definitely a nice to do. And we break it up like that. So that's normally where our clients start. And then it will lead into whatever gaps they have.
Interesting. So talk us through on one thing that I just thought of in terms of when you were speaking about awards and all sorts of things, something that's a hot topic of, and particularly in our industry, we operate in an industry that is on all the time, like it's another, well, I mean, it was before COVID, but it's certainly post-COVID or during COVID, is everyone needs IT and they need it now. And if they don't have it, the world's going to end, and
Yes.
And rightly so. It's an important thing. It's I often joke with people that the internet and IT is more important than electricity now, because with you can run off a battery or what have you. So it's super important, and people are now working around the clock. We've got people that are working 24/7 at weird times because it fits in with their family, etc., which is fine. There is, what I understand, some stuff before the federal parliament at the moment in regards to the right to disconnect. Talk us through that and the ramifications that's got for employers and employees. I think, from my perspective, I think it's a good thing because it sets expectations, strong expectations, employer, employee, and client. So it has a bit of a flow-on effect. You can't just utilise people's time whenever, however you like. Talk us through what's happening in that space and some of the flow-on effects.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, it hasn't been legislated just yet, but I believe it will be, and it's just exactly what that looks like. But if I had to guess, the biggest change is really that if an employee feels as if they don't have the right to disconnect. So, their boss is texting, they're a 9-to-5 employee working in an office, and their boss is constantly texting them or calling them outside of those hours at 6, 7, 8 p.m. at night. They are able to not answer their phone and not answer those text messages and not have ramifications because of that. So what happens in some companies, you can imagine what's urgent and important to the boss, the employee's trying to enjoy their family life, and the following day, that employee, there could be repercussions to say, well, you didn't answer my text at 8 p.m. and now we've lost a client, or it's resulted in a bill not being paid, or whatever that was. So employees will now have the right to actually go to the Fair Work Commission and lodge a complaint if they feel that they're being expected to work outside of their normal ordinary hours, and that's unreasonable. And the Fair Work Commission will be able to actually make a ruling on that and call the employer out and say, well, you're not able to do this anymore, and they can enforce that law on that particular company. But it really will come back to, again, modern awards, and I think they will put in clauses for the right to disconnect into different modern awards, and they could vary slightly across the different industries because it is, like you said, you're in the IT industry and it is a 24/7 business. So I'm hoping that there will be changes as per those modern awards. And it's also about what level you are within the company and what you are paid. So I mentioned before this boot test. So it's a better off overall test. If the award says a minimum pay rate for what maybe it's an IT person looking after 20 clients, and the modern award might say, okay, you need to pay them a minimum of 65,000 as an example, but you're paying this person 100,000 because that just happens to be market rate, or they're really good with your customers and they've been with you a few years. If you're paying well above the award and going above and beyond, then you can actually request that person to do reasonable additional hours as long as they're compensated. So in the example I've just given, you've got yourself $35,000 per year of kind of leeway. There's no overtime payments because you've encapsulated that into their salary. So it will come back to how you draft their employment contract as well. Did you actually put in the clause and make it very clear to them when they were hired and signed that employment contract that these are our business hours, and ideally we'd like you to work 9 to 5 on a normal day, but from time to time you will be required to do reasonable additional hours, and they may fall outside of your work hours, and they may fall on weekends, and they may fall on public holidays. And if that's reasonable for your business and industry and that person's paid enough to cover it, you will be okay. So it's not just going to be this blanket rule where nobody can work outside of a 7.6 hour days. There's definitely flexibility.
Tom, even though you're my boss, you can exercise your right to disconnect when I message you well after hours. So that's fine. Jane, just have another question. How involved do you get with a company? Now, you mentioned hiring and firing as well. Are you actually in the room for those sorts of discussions? Are you out of the room? Is it depending on client? How involved do you get?
Yeah, so it is depending on the clients. We can do as little or as much as they would like. What makes us very different to bigger players out there like your Employsures of the world, huge HR consultancies or even smaller boutique ones like us, is we don't do like fixed fees and retainers. We're all hourly. So we just do what the business needs at the time. And we also are not a recruitment agency, so we don't charge recruitment fees. So one of our clients might want assistance with recruitment, but maybe it's just because they're time poor, or maybe it's because they're not creative and they don't know how to write a really appealing job advert. So we may just do the job advert, we may post it on all of the job sites for them, and we may do the screening. But that employer might say, just send me the top 10 applicants, and I'm happy to actually take it from there, interview them and choose my own person. And then I might get you involved at the very end to do some psychometric testing. So it's really picking and choosing what they can't do themselves and having us sit in and assist. And that can be virtual, or we can be feet on the ground and be at their site. So that's sort of how the recruitment works. What I would say is when it's with terminations, most of the time we will be there and we will be running that conversation. Whenever it's performance management, terminations, and redundancies, the process you need to follow is so strict. And there is a number of procedures and steps that you need to follow for all of those three. So we try to be there as long as the client's happy for us. If not, we write them up scripts, but we will be there physically and we will run that meeting. The manager will still sit in with us and we'll refer to them, to talk about the intricacies of the job and maybe where they underperformed or why we're not continuing with them, or the financial difficulties of the company if it's a redundancy. But we lead that conversation to make sure that everything that is said is above board and is compliant with Australian legislation.
Interesting. Just back to the psychometric testing. It's one of those things that I've thought about and, seen used and what have you. We haven't. I've sort of taken when, for example, Dex and, other people, it's, it's as much about the employer or the employee, like, us as potential, and us liking them, and just a real gut feel thing over sort of 20 years of employing people. I know that's my sort of probably not the best way to do it, but I've used the gut feel for as long as I can remember. Talk us through psychometric testing and its benefits or limitations.
Yes, it depends on what role you're hiring, I guess. But one that I really believe in, doesn't matter what role you're hiring for, is I'm a big fan of personality assessments or personality and work style. So I use one called DISC. And the reason I use DISC is because I believe it's the most simple one out there for the normal person to understand. I studied psychology at university, so I'm a few steps ahead, and lucky me. But when I'm working with businesses, I find I can train a group of employees or a group of managers in half a day or a day on being basically mini psychologists to interpret these DISC reports because it's nice and simple. So I think understanding somebody's personality and work style, or their natural personality and work style, before actually hiring and onboarding them is really powerful, especially in the onboarding phase. Because what you find, if we just talk simply, when you're talking about work styles, you might have somebody who's really task orientated. And if they've got a task orientated work style, what they're looking to see is, and they're judging the company in their first 2 weeks, do I have a really clear job description? What are my KPIs? What am I expected to do in these first 2 weeks? Does the company have strong standard operating procedures that I can follow? And are they written down? So they're expecting all of these systems to be working. Then on the other side, you might have somebody who's highly people orientated. The way they're going to judge your company in the first 2 weeks is, how do I feel when I come into the office? Am I being treated well? Did they take me for a welcome lunch on my first day? Do I feel like I fit in? Is this a culture for me? Am I just being sent a whole bunch of emails, or is my manager actually coming to talk to me about tasks and performance? So, and if you flip it the wrong way and treat the task orientated like the people orientated, or vice versa, and get it wrong, you might wonder why somebody's not happy in their first few weeks. So I think that's really powerful across all roles. Then moving into, I guess, the next type of psychometric testing can be that verbal and numerical reasoning testing. And it depends on what role you're hiring for. So if we talk about doing those type of assessments, they're really good for specifically roles that need to utilize numbers, understand numbers, and need to be able to communicate what those numbers actually mean. So you're hiring an accountant, or you're hiring a salesperson or a BDM. You need them to have those skills. And there's no way to test before you hire. So putting them through something like that is really helpful. And what most of them do, or at least the one we use, will benchmark them against a library of data that will show, okay, here's an accountant and here's where their skill level should be. And here's Joe that you've just put through the test. And here are the bits where he falls within the benchmarks. And here are the bits where he falls outside. Might be highly above, or it might be quite low. At least then you can make an informed decision. Because the worst thing is you hire somebody and you believe they've got the skill set because they told you that they did, and you haven't done any testing, and then you're stuck in this rut. And I've seen it happen before. And the other testing that's really powerful is, computer skills testing. If Excel's really important in your business and you need them to be able to use it, I've seen so many times people hire somebody for a role and they say, oh yeah, I'm fantastic at Excel. And that's going to be 80% of their role, moving around numbers. And then they come into the business and they don't know how to do a VLOOKUP. And you're like, what? So if you don't test things, how do you really know? Because people will say anything in an interview. They're obviously at the interview because they want to take that job. So I do think, all different types of testing is important prior to hiring if you've got that opportunity.
Tom, I reckon we should retroactively...
I'll put you to the test this afternoon, Dex.
Damn. I'm downloading it now and having a look.
Interesting. I still think that the gut feel thing, it's still, I get all of that as well, but the gut feel is extremely important as well.
It is.
And at the end of the day, you've got to feel like that person's into the culture. I'm not sure how much you can assess that apart from gut feel. There's no test to sort of go, okay, well, is this person going to fit into our culture? Because at the end of the day, if I'm reasonably privy to the DISC profiling, you do want to, I imagine, you want a whole diverse group of people in an organisation, of diverse
Absolutely.
thinkers, and way you attack things. That's still rings true.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And we always do that when we're doing DIS. Hopefully we're doing it for the whole team and we actually map the team and we talk about the importance of diversity. You don't want to hire lots of mini me's, and managers will often do that. They go, oh, if I just hire a second me, that's great. No, you want to hire somebody that will complement you. You're the yin, so hire your yang. Hire somebody who's good at your weaknesses and complete that circle. And it means every project you set out to do, you get to do the parts you like and are good at. They get to do the parts they like and are good at. Put that together and you've got this complete circle. So that's important. And then going back to your first part of the question, how do you interview for culture? I go back to what are the core values for your business? What are those, 4 or 5 core values? And have you defined them into behaviors? And what I do is I turn them into into behavioral interviewing questions. So I don't tell them what our core values are, but I ask them behavioral interviewing questions around those 4 or 5 values. And you always want to use the technique that you're asking them about past behavior. Past behavior is the best prediction of future behavior. So you want to ask them, when in the past were you in a situation like this? How did you handle it? And what was the outcome? Because then they can't just make it up or go hypotheticals. This is what I would do. You want to know, when have they lived and breathed this part of one of your core values?
Tom, I think the test that you were referring to before was the shopping trolley test. Have you heard of that?
No.
You haven't heard of that? Oh,
No.
It was a thing that they did on the internet a while back, and it was a test where whether or not people would return a shopping trolley, and based off that one notion, would determine what sort of person they are. It was a very strange thing, and I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I return the shopping trolley. I'm a good person, and if you notice all of the other people that don't, it's like, yeah, got to watch out for you.
Hey, and
anyway, Jane, I'm going to ask you another.
Want that, Dexter. Sometimes you might be hiring for a sales BDM role, and you want somebody a little more dog eat dog cutthroat, and you don't want them returning the trolley because they're going to waste 3 minutes, and you want efficiency. So, yeah, but
Jane, that's me. I'm the sales BDM person, and I will return that trolley. But you know what?
Great,
I'm a talking guy too, so that's fine. I'm going to ask you this question, and it's funny, Jane, because you're our second chat for the day, and I asked the same question to the first person. AI. How has that affected you? I know I have some friends that are looking for jobs at the moment, and I only was made aware of this when they were going for jobs, saying how a lot of resumes now are getting scanned by AI, and if it's written a particular way or has particular words, it doesn't even see the recruiter. It's just automatically, it's like an if this then that scenario. If this resume has this, like automatically flick it off. So apart from that, in your company, where else have you used it or seen it or can see it coming to fruition?
Yeah, so we're big on AI and we're trying to stay ahead of the trend and learn as much as we can. I think for my business, it's about just being more efficient and saving time. So I think AI can be really helpful in, like drafting job descriptions and job adverts. What I will say is, can't just use what it spits out. You have to then go back and edit it and make it your own, because anyone can tell when something's been written by ChatGPT, especially resumes. You do see them and you're like, oh, this has just come straight from ChatGPT. There's no thought in it, or a cover letter that's come straight from ChatGPT. So you always need to have the human element, but it will save 80% of the time. Get it to spit it out and then go back and edit it. So helpful in a lot of those situations. The other thing we've been trying to build and work on behind the scenes with an AI company is trying to come up with the code to interpret these 121 modern awards. So that's something that we're still working on, and I think would be really helpful for everyone in Australia, just because business owners don't have time to read 300 pages, nor do they understand what it's saying. And it's like, Clause 3.1 links to 17.8, but you need to read it in conjunction with 104.9. And you're like, what? It can be really confusing. So I think that would be really helpful for the employment landscape, just simplifying some of that. But yeah, any systems or processes in your business is great. I mean, even just having meetings or interviews, or when you're conducting investigations, there's so many AI tools out there that you can add on to your virtual meeting. I mean, Firefly's one, but there's millions of them that will actually record all of the actions that were said in that particular meeting and put them in nice little dot points for you, as well as script all the notes that were said. That means you don't have to sit there and take notes and write everything. That's a huge time-saving tool. So, I think it's just endless, to be honest.
Interesting. Talk us through some of the other technology stuff that you've seen change in industries. It's a question that we ask a lot of people in terms and HR has been one that's, whether it's HR systems, training systems, etc., things like that. It's sort of like if there's something that can be processed or automated, there's a system for it. We've got hundreds of subscriptions to it, and we notice that as an IT service provider, we have organisations come to us and say, "Oh, we've got this system. Can you integrate this with this, or what have you?" There's a proliferation of these systems chain with human resources. What have you seen in that space? Is there obviously you would utilize them from the obvious ones, payroll and all that sort of stuff, but I see Employment Hero and all these sorts of things. What do they all do, and are they of benefit to particularly small and medium-sized organisations? Because, again, before you answer, it's like, here we go again. Here's another $30, $20, $30, $40 a month per employee per month, and then all of a sudden you've got hundreds of dollars per person. So it adds up. Where's the value sit and lie?
Yeah, it's such a balancing act dependent on what that business needs. Look, for small businesses that have under 20 employees, do they need all of that fancy stuff? Probably not. I think once you start to get over the 20 mark plus, then you do need to consider a good HRIS system, because it just will save you a lot of time and streamline things on onboarding. And it depends on your business structure. If you're a business like you're in, hospitality and restaurants or retail, and you're hiring high amounts of casual workforce, you can't be sending employment contracts, job descriptions, tax file forms, superannuation forms, employee details, manually scanning them. Like you just can't live in that dinosaur age. It will bog you down. You'll need a full-time person. So, implementing a HRIS system to automate and do that all for you so that you can quickly interview a casual employee, have them signed up within an hour without having to do something and just press a button just because you've got their email address, I think is amazing. But look, the HRIS systems are coming so far now. You've got the options of having all your performance management records within them. It'll remind managers that they have to have these quarterly check-ins with their employees. I've seen a few move towards, I call them like HRIS Facebook type models that are more around engagement for employees. So it's about like, I'll give you a gold ribbon because you lived and breathed our core value yesterday, and I want to give you kudos. So there's all those nice engagement ones now that we're seeing that are more like look and feel like a Facebook, and you can post photos about what you did on the weekend or what's going on in your life, or you just got married or you just had a baby. So there's those types of technology. And then there's a big push that I'm seeing towards all of these health and well-being applications. And most of them are mobile based. So it's like having your employees check in on a daily basis. The ones you mainly see is it might ask you 5 questions every morning at whatever it is, 9:30 a.m. about how you're feeling today. And then those results get sent to your manager. So if you are having a bad day, if it's a rating out of 10 and you've rated 3 for the day, we all have bad days. You're just having a bad day, but at least your manager knows you're having a bad day today, and they're going to treat you differently. They're not going to storm in and go, "Where's that report? It was due 5 o'clock and it's not on my desk." They're going to come in and say, "How are you doing? I realize today's not a great day for you. Is there something you want to outsource or that I can do to help you?" So knowing how to approach people, I think they're becoming quite popular. And then now it's going even further and moving into this whole, neurodiversity field. So again, quick shifts, lots of technology coming. It just needs to be organizational dependent. Some organizations really like that face-to-face touch, and they're good at having those conversations and those check-ins naturally when somebody comes into work. but others are not, or
They don't need a system for it.
Well, yeah, some are remote and hybrid. So if you've got a fully remote workforce, and that's so common these days, that's how some businesses fully operate. They might have 50 employees, but nobody ever sees each other face to face. Well, how do you know how your employee's feeling on any day? So they become really relevant for that workforce.
And is that something that you help organisations with in terms of, what system to go with, implementation and the ideas around it? Is that something you offer as an organisation yourself?
We
to
absolutely
your organisations?
do. Yeah, we absolutely do, but we're agnostic. We don't own any of these technology systems, nor will we. We want to stay at our core of what we're really good at. But we know what's going on, and we'll always give them, a couple of different options. And if we do partner with some organisations, then we can recommend them, often have a dedicated account manager, and sometimes we can get bulk discounts because we've got a number of clients. And we're trying to build those partnerships up over time to be able to service clients more. So yeah, we definitely give them some suggestions, but at the end of the day, they can choose whatever they would like.
Yeah, right. Is there any other major sort of verticals or things that in the human resources space that you do for a typical client that we haven't covered? The more this conversation's gone, I'm just like, you don't realise, as an owner of an organisation, just how much goes into all this. You sort of just sometimes do it on autopilot. Mm. So is there any other major things that you can take off people's hands that, as an employer, bogs them down in just the day-to-day? I mean, At the end of the day, this is about, an organisation like yours is about obviously being compliant and all those sorts of things, and making, improving happiness and all those sorts of things. But it's about freeing an employer up to do what they do best. For us as an IT organisation, it's, let's provide the best IT that we can. Am I missing anything that you do provide?
I'm not going to go through everything, but look, I think some interesting. What I always
next interview.
Yeah, what I always say is there's reactive HR, which we've talked a lot about, and that's all the compliance stuff and making sure you're not going to get yourself into trouble and you're doing the right thing, and the firefighting, and that's all reactive. We want to try and move our clients when they're ready to proactive HR. And this is when we're looking at more strategies for their entire business and, how to retain their employees longer. So 2 different things that we do is, one, helping businesses develop a really strong EVP, which is employee value proposition. And you want to do that today, not when you need to hire 5 people tomorrow because it's all too late. So actually workshopping and coming up with, well, what is our employee value proposition? Why should people work for us? What benefits do we offer? What do we do uniquely that no one else does? Why is our culture so great? And it could be anything. It could be we allow dogs in the office. It could be like we give you a day off for your birthday. Absolutely anything. It might be just, we offer free parking in the city. Saves a hell of a lot of money, or we pay for your train fees, whatever it is. But I think to be able to, first, because you need to recruit the best talent before you can look at retaining them. So strong employee value propositions, and having that for both your external market when you're recruiting, it's there to go, but to have it for your internal employees and to have it everywhere so they know and feel this is a great place to work, and look at all these things I get and how well looked after I am. Because most people, it's not just about the money and the wage you take home. That's important, but it's all these other things. Employee assistance programs are really big now, and health and wellness days are really big, So I think that is helpful for attracting talent. And then when the other side is, okay, we've got great talent, now how do we retain them? Another product that we offer is what I call stay interviews. So this is what you would usually do with an employee that's been at the company for 12 months. So, you've gone through their 30, 60, 90-day plan, right? And you've trained them up. They've now made it through their 6-month probation, which you should be doing, because that's a really important part in the employment where you get to make a decision whether they should continue. And at the 12-month mark, they've passed all of those things. And you've actually invested a lot of time in recruiting them and a lot of money training them up. And now they have that IP and knowledge and are probably working at 100%. That's what you would expect for a 12-month employee. So now it becomes really critical for that business to retain them, let's say for the next 5 years, because if they leave, we know how much that's going to cost. So these stay interviews, it's better that you do it as an external consultant, because employees just will not tell. the business owner or the manager the truth. There's always a fear there. So we run it for them. It takes about an hour and a half. We ask them a lot of questions about why they originally joined, 12 months ago. And it might just be, like the money and location, and the job title sounded okay. And then we find out why they're staying today. And it might be, I love the rapid pace that this company is growing. I love the independence and accountability I get in my role. I love the training opportunities that have been given to me, and the culture's great. So you want to understand the variance of why someone joined originally and then is now staying. And then we get them to assess themselves on a flight risk scale and explain that. And how could we retain you for that 2 to 5 years in time? What sort of actions could the employer do that would engage you and motivate you to want to be in this business a long time? So yeah, they're probably the two, the EVP and then the stay interviews on the other end.
Jane, I thought I had your business all kind of wrapped up in my head, and then you just drop something like that, and that's a whole another interview that we could spend 45 minutes to an hour and talking.
Yes.
And also that mental health piece as well is something that, because I previously came from self-employment. I've only just been starting working with Tom for a number of months now, and I was always in tune with my own sort of personal feelings. But now, obviously, with Tom, he's got to look after a team of 30 plus and their feelings and emotions, and having human resources around that and a platform with which you can basically say, hey, I'm not 100% today, I think is super valuable. Tom, was there any other questions that you had? Like, I know we could talk for another hour. I think
there's so much more. We'd love to have you back and dive into some of those, particularly those proactive pieces. But look, I really appreciate you coming on, Jane, and telling us about your business and what you do, and goes to show that it's just, key takeaway. Look at the proactive, not at the reactionary. I mean, the reactionary stuff, in a sense, is it never goes away. But I suppose if you do more of the proactive, it makes the reactionary stuff less and less. And look, I can't thank you for coming on. How do people find you? Website, contact details, all that sort of stuff?
Yes, absolutely. So website is thesavegroup.com. We're based out in Dandenong South in commercial offices, but we travel anywhere where our clients are. So, predominantly our customers are based in Melbourne, but we do have customers nationally as well. So if you are in another state, we can assist. It's just more of a virtual assistance, and happy for anybody to reach out and contact me on my email address, jane@thesavegroup.com, and have an hour discovery call and just learn. I love learning about different industries and different businesses, and that's what makes my job so rewarding.
Yeah, I bet. Wonderful. Well, thanks for all the advice. As I said, we'll get you back on. I'm particularly interested to expand on a couple of those key parts on the proactive front, and we'll link all your details in the notes. And again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Dexter.
Thanks a lot, Jane.
Thanks, Jane.
I'll be in touch to chat to you about Tom after this.
All good things. Good idea. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.